Okay, I hope you can all see that. Going to move this out of the way. Okay, so this class is about drawing lines with energy. What I want to do is to talk a lot about how line, when you're drawing something, gives the feeling of the object that you're drawing. So if you're drawing a landscape and it's a very calm landscape, with potentially full leaves, etc., you want to find the right kind of marks to draw that. If you are drawing a still life that's very with heavy things in it, like a pumpkin, an apple, etc., you want to find those lines which talk about weight and volume. So it's interesting drawing because there's so many marks that you can make and there's so many materials that you can use to make drawings with. But we're going to stick with, pencils and charcoal and inks. Okay. Now, how do I move to the next slide? Nope. Nope. Okay. That's going to be interesting. Ah, there it is. Great. So the objectives for this is for you to become familiar with tones and shades and hues and more confident in using drawing materials and selecting your drawing materials. Which are the drawing materials that are best going to serve you in drawing this particular landscape or this particular still life or this particular maybe even a figure or a scene like a city scene, etc. What are the right materials to choose? And I'm hoping that after this sort of 4 or 5 sessions that we're going to do, that you will have completed a series of drawings that use a range of mark making. And I'm just wondering how to move to the next slide. Oh, there it is. Okay, there are several sessions for this class, and these are sorts of things that I want to cover. So today, I'm doing an introduction to it, and we're going to do a grid drawing, and we're going to do some mark making. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do it, and then you can either do it in your own time, or you can do it along with me if you've got your materials. We're also going to cover a still life with charcoal. Now, in this particular session, we're going to cover the whole page in charcoal, and we're going to use a rubber to excavate through the charcoal to find the object. So they won't have a drawn line around the outside. They're going to be revealed through rubbing away and also adding mark making. So it's sort of letting the background give some volume and space for the objects that they're in. And then the next one we're going to do is still life with ink and sticks. Now, ink and sticks is great because it loosens up your line. You can't make a line that's detailed with a stick dipped in ink. So it's a wonderful freeing up process. And the lines, there's obviously the ink drops off and you don't know where it's going to drop. And it's very much an experiential thing. And at the same time, it's very experimental. And then we're going to try some landscape drawing. We're going to choose some landscapes that are kind of, you can take photos, you can bring photos and work from those, or you can imagine your landscape, or you can actually sit in front of your landscape and draw from it. We're going to choose landscapes which are full of textures and full of, variety. And then we're going to do a pinhole drawing. I'm going to show you in a minute what that means. We're going to use a pin to make holes in a piece of paper that eventually will create all kinds of lines. They're very subtle. It's a very interesting way of working, and I'll send you what you need for that class. Okay, I'm going to try and do the next slide now. There it is. Now for this class, you're going to need, let me move that down. You're going to need some graphite stick and pencils, 1B to 6B. I also, I'm happy if people want to use H. H is quite a hard pencil, but 1B to 6B, they're very soft. They make great lines. We're going to look at them all in a minute. And then also charcoal and compressed charcoal. So charcoal, it's a very particular way of making charcoal. It's sort of burnt very slowly in an oven. So you don't lose, it doesn't turn to ash. It actually burns all the way through, but incredibly slowly so that it remains in its form. And it's a wonderful material to make very expressive marks with. Compressed charcoal is where they've taken all of that charcoal dust and squeezed it into a very hard stick. And it makes a very dark line. Also, Conte. Conte is a wonderful thing. If you can find some earth colors like raw sienna or burnt sienna to work alongside your charcoal, that's also very useful. And you need an eraser for pencil and one for charcoal. They're quite different, those erasers. I haven't got a putty eraser on me at the moment, but I will get one. I thought I had silenced that. Sorry about that. So a putty rubber is a rubber that you can mold in your hand and you can take away charcoal with it. It gets very dirty, but it's still a very useful tool, and also an ordinary eraser for pencil. And chalks, if you like drawing with chalks, please bring along some chalks. And also a sketchbook. I think it's very important to have a sketchbook if you're interested in drawing that you use every day, that you try and get at least 15 minutes of drawing in a day, just to keep your experience and your handling of your materials, getting better and better. And you need good quality, heavy paper. Sketchbooks, I think you can, I think getting a sketchbook with thin paper and it isn't going to serve you. I think quality paper is an amazing, we sort of forget about paper when we're drawing. We don't think of it very much because it's, it's what we're going to put our marks on. But actually papers have very different ways of receiving your marks. And I'm going to show you what I have today, which you probably go, wow, that's crazy. And also a drawing board if you have one. It's quite nice to have a drawing board to stick your paper down and be quite serious about it. So take your paper out of your sketchbook and put it onto a drawing board. You can draw flat on the table, which is what I tend to do, but a drawing board also gives you, an angle that you might prefer to draw at. Okay, next slide. Oh, did that happen? Come on. No. Okay, I wonder why that's. Michael, I wonder if you can. Oh, there it is. Okay. I think this is the next slide. It's very hard to tell. Yeah, okay. So these are the soft lines, the kinds of lines that you might use to work with a still life. There's a variety of line there, but it's a soft pencil. So we're going to look at soft lines. How to get the next slide? No. Really sorry about this. How do I move to the next slide? Does anybody know?
Stephanie.
Oh, yes.
Okay. Is it the one?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
Am I moving them along or not?
You can escape, press the escape button and bring the desired slide up and maximize.
Okay. Are you moving them along for me?
No.
No.
You are the only one.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll get used to this. Sorry. Okay, so this is lines for a landscape. This is kind of wild landscape. There's a lot of dried sticks in it and bushes and trees, and it just gives you the essence of landscape. I mean, obviously this is an extreme example, but it's up to you in terms of how you might draw your landscape, but it's got a huge variety of lines. It absolutely reflects where we are right now in the New Forest with all the dry gorse and chopped down gorse and the sort of barren feel to it, although it's very much like a drawing all the time in the New Forest. It's fantastic. Now let me see if I can get to the next one. Yes, okay. This is where I was talking about starting with the background. So we're going to cover the background and then we're going to either reveal it by not drawing the outside, which you can see on the left image, On the right image is where we are revealing it through using a rubber or our fingers, etc. And we're drawing the object out from the background. You can see how the background is giving the objects a sense of space and where they are. And it's a wonderful way of drawing and being free also about how one draws. This is the pinhole drawing that I was talking to you about. On the left-hand side is a drawing that the paper has been really almost destroyed, and it's caused parts of it to fall out. Actually, this drawing, I'm next to a gallery right now in my workshop, and that drawing is on exhibition right now by an artist called Carrie Mason. And she has punched a hole into a cork board or into polystyrene or something. Her paper has been pinned to it. She's using the pin to create a texture. It's very much based on a kind of landscape. And part of that paper, once you keep going around those holes, parts of it fall out. And it's pretty fantastic, actually. On the right-hand side, you can see that it's very effective when you're drawing something incredibly delicate. So we will be looking for very delicate things in this workshop, and we'll be using the pin to make lines. Okay, let me go. So I'm just wondering, I don't know if any of you want to share how much you already know about drawing, or how, maybe you could think to yourselves, I guess you guys are in the lounge, and think about how much you already know. What are your go-to drawing materials? What do you tend to pick up when you start drawing? What are the things that you keep in your pencil case? Think about those. Maybe think about buying some other things or using other things just to kind of push your drawing along. And also, learning about value and tone, etc. And how much do you know about the quality of line? So the value of line will be its depth, its darkness or lightness, and and the quality of the line will be how expressive it is. How much do you already know about that? I think it's really good to have a think yourselves. And this is the kind of thing that I think everybody should try and do. So you divide your paper up into 8 squares, leaving one completely white and the other end completely black. And then trying very gently to color in each square a little bit darker than the next. And that will help you to have control over your pencil or your charcoal. And this is what I was going to do today. I was going to show you, this is a really important starter for drawing. I used to teach this when I taught BFA students or Bachelor of Arts students drawing class. We would start by dividing our paper up into 16 squares, and then I would ask the students to find 16 different lines, or marks with different pencils, etc. This is a really good way of developing a kind of dictionary or your own encyclopedia of mark making that you can go to every time you think, well, maybe I'm going to use cross-hatching here, or maybe I'm going to use straight lines going across. Entirely up to you how you develop your own encyclopedia of drawing. And so in summary, actually, I'm going to stop sharing right now, and I'm going to come back to see you all. Okay, hello again. What I'm going to do is divide. I've already started to divide up my paper, but I wanted to show you some materials. First of all, and what I might do now is to share my camera, which is just perched here. Hopefully it's going to work. Here we go. I'm going to share my camera. There you go. So I'm in my studio right now, and it's next to a gallery. And right here in front of you, I hope you can see this, is my paper. And I've got different pencils out. These are the soft pencils. They're ranging from B to 7B. And they're also different thicknesses. So I've got very thick pencils, make a great thick line. And I've got your normal pencils as well. These are all soft, and they each one make a different kind of mark. And these are my H pencils. These are, they're a much tighter line. They're a fainter line, a tighter line, and a harder line. I have some compressed charcoal here. It's very, very dark. It's very messy as well, so be prepared to get messy. And I also have some black Conte. I don't have any other Conte at the moment, but I will get some. Conte, you can find it in Michael's, or you can, if you're in America, you can find it in any craft shop. You can also probably buy it online, and you probably have some already. And this is my charcoal. This is a great big stick of charcoal, and you can see the rings from the tree in it. It's so incredible. But it has been very carefully made, and it is great for drawing. I also have a sharpener, which has a large and a smaller normal pencil. This is for my large pencils. So I can sharpen thicker pencils like these. Okay, those are the sorts of things you're going to need. You're also going to need some drawing ink, which would be useful, and some sticks. But each week I will send out, every time I run this drawing class, I will send out notes about from this class, what you would need for the next class. Now I have right here this huge paper that I've put down. This is wallpaper. It's like a standard wallpaper that you might put on your walls that you were going to paint on. It's heavy duty. It's great for drawing on. It's great for experimental drawing. And also you can make it as long as you want to. I use it quite a lot with students because it's cheap, one, and it's not bad quality. It's got a good grain on it, so you can get a very wonderful kind of wonderful mark on it. But this is drawing paper, and it's not thin. It's not, I'll send out what kind of, grade you need for your paper, but, it's up to you. You can choose something that has a grain on it. It's quite nice to draw on watercolor paper as well, because it has a wonderful grain too. But I've divided my square up into 4 at the moment, and I know I want 16 squares that are kind of the same size. It doesn't really matter for this. They don't have to be exact. And I am going to measure it. I'm going to show you how I want you to make a grid. I'm going to do mine 7 centimeters. And that way I'm going to end up, because I've measured my paper, I know how many I can put down on here. And then I'm going to take each of those squares. I'm going to try out, like I showed you in the slideshow, different lines. It's really important to develop your vocabulary in drawing. I know that sounds nuts, but this is what sketchbooks are for. Sketchbooks are great because if you see something, you're walking along and you think, gosh, that's a fantastic texture. I'm just going to grab that in my sketchbook. I have a sketchbook all the time. I tend to, because I'm a jewelry and metalsmither most of the time, I like to grab textures and ideas from nature, from just something that somebody might be wearing. I think, wow, that's an interesting texture on that piece of clothing, so I will grab it and do something with it. So these are all going to be 7 centimeters by 7 centimeters ish, not being exact, although it might look like I am. And then I'm going to take all my different materials and I'm going to show you what they do. Oh, yeah. And these are the kinds of lines I want you to develop going forward for all sorts of different drawings. Okay, so I've got my grid. I hope you can see that. Michael, can you let me know if that's visible? Is that pretty
Yes,
good?
this is visible.
Okay, great. Okay, right. So I'm going to take my 7B. This is a very, very soft pencil, 7B. Let's see, does it say 7B? Yep. And I'm going to start in one of my squares, and I'm going to, and also holding a pencil when you're drawing is really important. We're taught to hold our pencils as if we're writing our names. You know, that's what we've been taught at school, and that's what we get used to, and we kind of clutch it. We hold it incredibly tightly, and that doesn't help us give many types of marks. And so what I'm thinking is that if you hold your pencil very loosely, you know, just drop it in your hand like this, and maybe keep it in place with your thumb, and see what it does. You know, it's a very maybe a faint line. I'm going to go across and back with this. And I'm just letting it just gently make a mark. You probably can't even see it. It's so fine. I can hardly see it. But it has an impact. It has an effect. It's a 7B, so it will keep making a mark. And in fact, I'm going to switch to the compressed charcoal and see what that does. Holding it very gently. And I'm going across and back. You know, it's almost falling out of my hand. And you can tell that that mark is a delicate mark. And it's very good for things like, you know, skies. It's almost coming out of my hand. And I'm going to take a different pencil. I might take a, let me see, 5B. And in this one, I'm going to hold it quite firmly. I'm going to press my pencil down hard, and then I'm going to let it trail. And I'm letting it trail off. It's wonderful landscape kind of line, this. I hope everything's stable. It says my internet is not. I think it's pretty good though. Okay. So I'm going to press hard, and then I'm going to let it very gently let go. This is a great line for drawing landscapes and things that almost are flying past. So that pressing and letting go gives a line with two different energies in it. You can see that better. I hold it up close. It's a great line for drawing landscapes. So what I would like you to do, and I'm not sure if you have these things on you, but what I would like to do is for you to divide up your paper and then make some different kinds of marks. I'm pressing really hard now, and to see what that does. I'm doing a kind of V shape, and then I'm going to let it get very light as I move it across the page. I think I'm in the way of the light here. It's a kind of tick that I'm doing. It's very good for developing textures like cloth. You know, it gives that sort of woven feel to it. But also if you're drawing, you're going to have a light source. And this is quite good to change the value of your cloth, especially if the light's coming onto it on the right-hand side. So what I'm asking you to do is to fill these squares with different intensities. Now, the one that I think is useful for everybody is, you know, creating dots. You know, dotting is a great kind of way of building up textures. It's a way of building up, you know, and also when you see these dots, you know the noise that they've made. That's what I like about lines, is that they're noisy. You know, they show the sound of the lead hitting the paper, and it adds meaning. It adds meaning to the drawing when you are. Can you hear that? Yes, you can. And then I'm going to do them much lighter. So always do a range of your marks on your paper, different intensities. You could try that with a different type of pencil. This is a B, but I'm going to go for a 2H. Let's see what a 2H does. It's a much finer. Can you see? See the difference between the B and the H. I'm going to hold that up close to my camera. You can see the difference between the B, which is here, and the H, 2H. This is a 4B and this is a 2H. 2H is much finer. It's very hard to get a kind of intensity with it, but it has a certain quality that you might want. Now let's look at some of these charcoals, shall we? Let's look at the Conte. This is wonderful. Always comes in this sort of square. It's quite fine. It will smudge as well, which is great. This is quite a hard one, but it's lovely. You know, this is great for landscape. And if you can get those earthy colors, I think you'll really enjoy what it does. I almost want to color this whole thing in just to see. You can see the paper coming through now. This is why paper is so important, why we need to think about it quite a lot. And then you can go over what you've done, just gently going backwards and forwards, making it stronger and stronger. Conte, lovely, really love it. Now, let's have a go with, where is it? Compressed charcoal. Now, this is possibly my favorite. Let's see what this does. Look at it. Ouch. This is where you get your serious blacks from. Taken all that charcoal and pressed it into a square. It's fantastic. Does anybody have any questions or jump in and ask away? And then this is great with your finger. You know, you can finish off that with your finger. This is great for landscapes as well. Also good for, and it makes a mess. Look at all that mess. I'm going to sort of, can you see? This is what happens with charcoal. And it loves to move into other squares. It loves to, you know, meld and mold and become a great shading tool with your other textures. So you can put it over some of your other lines just to see what the effect is. So this, when you've created your grid, this is the place where you can experiment. Now I'm going to take the charcoal. This is a very fat stick of charcoal. You can get very fine ones. But today we're making marks, and so I'm not after creating eyebrows or eyelids or, you know, detailed twigs. Let me see what this one does. I'm going to go down. It's lovely. Great sound again, sort of scraping along. When I look at drawings, I can hear them. I know that sounds a bit crazy, but I can hear them because I can just imagine the artist using it and what kind of noise it makes on the paper. I think if you tune into that too, it will help the expression. This is quite a fine one. It's not like compressed charcoal. It's very delicate. And have a look at the difference between compressed charcoal, which is up here, and just the ordinary willow charcoal. It's not so messy as the compressed, but it is, you know, it's pretty messy. Look at my fingers. Okay, so in this is a 6B. Then I want you to kind of, I've been just doing some sort of landscape lines, but what could be good is to kind of look at some cross-hatching. Cross-hatching is a good start for creating form, you know, especially if you do it cross-hatching on a circular movement. It helps to create volume, cross-hatching, and shading and giving things, you know, a light source. What I'm trying to do here is to create a kind of bringing things forward, sometimes making it a little bit darker, helps the form come through. So try your cross-hatching as well. You can see I'm using it on a curve, so it's beginning to give a form to the, you can just see a sort of maybe an apple or side of a bottle coming out there. So try that as well. That's really useful. And you can try without doing that, just see what happens if you're quite geometrical about it. Less curved. Very useful cross-hatching, especially when you're using the ink with the stick. That will help you to make form happen. There we are. And then, of course, you can invent. I like to use a kind of bubble shape, and I'm using a 3B. Actually, I'm going to move to a pencil, which is an F. It's quite a hard pencil. And I'm going to make a kind of bubble mark going round and round. I might go round and round some of these, almost like a scribble. These can be useful for textures again that have a kind of, knitted or a fabric. So once you've finished your grid pattern, you'll be ready to start drawing all kinds of different things, because you'll have this sort of go-to sample that you've created that's yours entirely as well. So you could also always try on each one to get a little bit lighter, change the size of those little bubbles and see what happens to the sort of energy of the drawing. Really, really light here. You've got to always change your pencil as well to holding your pencil again really loosely so that the mark is really light. I mean, I think you'll really enjoy what holding your pencil really loosely does. Because when drawings are about observation, they're about looking at things for a long period of time. And when you've done a drawing with a lot of variety and texture in it, people look at it for a long time and they will notice even the most faintest lines, because it's part of the drawing and it's part of the expression of that drawing. I don't know whether you can see how faint those are. Let's see. Yes, very faint. You can just see them here in this area here. Very useful for creating variety and creating depth. You might notice that there's some depth is beginning to happen in some of these, particularly here, where the lighter part perhaps is becoming into the foreground, and this is the dark space beyond. And you can see as well here that there's an exchange of depth, and in this one too. Okay, let me see. So I hope that you will be able to grid up your, look at this one. This is a graphite I was talking about before. Graphite always has a very shiny feel to it. And it's incredibly useful if you want to get a very shiny surface on something. You can get different grades of graphite. This one you've got to really push hard with. But it sort of presses the paper down, and it's quite, it's a wonderful texture. I don't know if you can see how shiny that is. Can you see that? Yes, you can. I just saw it shine up in the camera. Oh, hang on. Lights. Oh, there it is. Can you see? So this presses the sort of grains of the paper down, and it becomes shiny. Sometimes that's a really useful sort of part of a drawing. So graphite's great. You can get different intensities. Recommend you get some of that. And keep going on it. It's almost like burnishing. You know, when you burnish clay with the back of a teaspoon, it gets really, really shiny. And in jewelry and metalsmithing, we burnish silver and copper all the time, and it makes the surface incredibly shiny. It presses the grains down on a minute scale. Okay. Now, I want to kind of show you what happens if you start rubbing out. So I hope this is making sense, and I hope that you will get your paper and divide it up into a grid and experiment with all of these lines. And then don't get precious about this at all, because you know what you're doing is you're developing vocabulary. And so I'm going to see what happens if I start to take away with a rubber. Just going to pull out a little shape there. You see it? There it is. A little mound happening there, maybe a hill. It's beginning to have a landscape feel. I think everything on here is beginning to have a landscape feel. I probably need to, you know, right now think about other sorts of lines. Maybe it's because everything's horizontal. But this is what a rubber will do. So it'll take away bits. And you can give something a light source by saying, okay, the light's coming from here, so I'm going to take out this side a little bit more. You see? So it's beginning to, there we are. Building a light source. And then you can go back in with a pencil and give it some form if you want to. So I might just very carefully bring that side back in with a pencil. It's quite a hard pencil. I'm beginning to see you can draw back into it. So lots of techniques here for you to think about. I'm going to turn this upside down. That way, maybe it won't look so landscape driven. And I'm going to try and find some lines that are not so landscapey driven. Just checking the time, make sure I'm not going over 3B. And I'm going to try maybe not taking my pencil off the paper at all. And I'm just going to kind of go around, and I'm going to, it's kind of a wiggly line. I'm going to kind of keep, sorry. I don't know what that was. Okay. And then I'm going to keep drawing around and round. Okay. I'm beginning to create some depth through a different kind of line here. It's not so landscapey. Might be something that you could explore in terms of still life. It's quite nice not to take your pencil off the paper. Just follow that line around and see what it does. When I'm teaching, I also ask students to draw the fastest line they can, and then the slowest line. So I'm going to try a fast line here. The thing about the fast lines is that they look fast. You know, if you were trying to draw something that was moving quite quickly, you'd want the kind of line that, or the landscape feels like it's flowing, or you know, you've got a kind of very energetic, dynamic still life. You're going to want some dynamic line, aren't you? So that I get students to draw as quickly as they can, and then I ask them to draw as slowly as they can. I'm going to show you what the difference. I'm going to use the same. It's a 4B. It's quite a thick. I realize that you can see that better on the camera. So I'm just going to draw a very, very slow line. Be here all day. But it really does show, that slowness. I'm holding my pencil quite light. I'm just going to do another few so that you can see what that's like. Okay, right. Let's try and show you. So you can see how the dynamic that's coming across is slow. It's about a line that is not rushing across the paper. It's got a nice little wiggle on it as well. It's got a lot of character, I think, just as much as the fast line, but just a very different intensity. So when you get hold of your grid and your paper, try these different speeds of line. So what I have here, what I'm building up is my go-to when I'm going to draw. So if I'm going out into the landscape and it's a kind of it's a blustery day and leaves are blowing around, which they are doing right now, I would probably be choosing, some of these sorts of lines to draw with. If it's a calm day and soggy, it's kind of soggy as well. Every now and then it's kind of soggy out there. The leaves are sort of very damp. I would probably be looking at more of these sorts of lines. These lines which, talk about weight and slowness and heaviness. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to ask any of you if you have any questions. I don't know. I think there's just you and me here. I guess there's people in the lounge. But if you have any questions, please come over or even, email me, put them in the chat. And I hope that's been kind of useful for you. I'm going to share my screen again. And I'm going to go back to my slide. Here we are. So in summary, I'm hoping that through these series of drawing classes that you're going to become very familiar with experimental mark making. And I hope I've been sort of showing that today. Don't get too precious about it, just explore. And you can make 2 grids if you want, and you can start to experiment even further. I mean, I feel like I don't have that many different experimental mark making lines here, and I could go on and keep trying to build them up. It might be a good idea to make a little note as well against each one. What did you use? I used compressed charcoal on that one. I used an HB 2H on that one. And on this one, I used a 6B. So it's quite good to take notes. You can use the side or even draw over the top of it, write over the top of it what you used, so that you know how to go back to it. So you've been experimental, and I'm hoping that you will be, you'll develop a real diverse vocabulary in drawing. And I'm also hoping that you'll become more familiar with drawing materials. And the drawing materials, there's just so many out there. Try and get, a range of drawing materials, because they all do very different things. And you're the person, because, you've got your creativity there. Everybody's creative. I totally believe that everyone can draw. And, there's no drawing that doesn't have quality. So don't worry about if it doesn't look like what you're trying to draw. That's just not It's not important. Just enjoy it. I mean, I love it. It's just so enjoyable. Okay. And I don't know, I'm just thinking about the people in the lounge. You can use the chat if